Welcome to the Inspired Intentions podcast with Skyterra Wellness. If you've been too busy and not taking care of yourself, it's time to reset habits and plunge into your new normal. This is Jeff and Rachel back with you today, and we have this question that constantly comes up just around campus and in general is, what truly makes an efficient fitness routine?
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Rachel.
I think this is a really great time to talk about efficient fitness because I think at the beginning of the year, a lot of people will have their New Year's resolutions. They'll be wanting to focus on, I want to get healthier, want to have a fitness routine, but they'll try to do too much. So I think today, let's try to help everybody find a way to keep their resolutions or restart their resolutions, find a way to be healthy, find a way to exercise, and not feel like they have to spend all day doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the dilemma. There's so much asked of us these days. And when we're trying to implement a new routine, especially a fitness routine, it can be overwhelming because I do think the majority of the population believes they have to do more than they actually need to do.
Yes.
And when you think about this, in top 10 New Year's resolutions, exercise is always like in the top 5.
Yeah.
I personally come at efficient fitness from the world of excessively training, doing Ironman competitions, marathon, and really feeling that if I didn't burn a certain number of calories, I couldn't eat a certain type of food that evening. And it was sort of a restrictive, kind of difficult scenario where the amount of exercise I was doing dictated other behaviors in my life.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think it can consume you when you rely on something that you have almost all control over. So like with exercise, you can control how much time you put in. Fitness, you can always do more, but sometimes it's more difficult to figure out what's the right amount that allows me to not overcompensate in other areas of my life.
Yeah, and I think, if we think about how you can be efficient with your fitness, what we're talking about is really not just a time domain, but also making sure that your movements are effective and that you don't have to spend a lot of time doing something where, you feel like you're overtraining, but you're not. And I actually have a really good story about this, which is something that happened to me. A couple years ago, I was training, not necessarily for anything specific, but I got into a routine of exercising with a 27-year-old male. He was my training partner. And I was 41 at the time. And we were working out for 2.5 hours a day. And I was doing whatever he did. I mean, obviously I was using my own weights and I did that for about 10 months. Probably wasn't sleeping like I should have been, wasn't eating like I should have been. And I ended up getting the flu, which turned into bronchitis, which turned into pneumonia.
Whoa.
And it knocked me out for 3 months. And, at the time I didn't know, what had happened. And I think it was just trying to do too much. So that brings us to how can we exercise and be healthy and not end up with pneumonia or not end up really feeling burned out.
Yeah. Do you before we dive in a little further, do you recognize what your motivation was, like to keep that amount of fitness in your world?
I think the motivation is probably what a lot of people are motivated by, which is a fear of getting older and a fear of, not being as healthy as you used to be. And I think that a lot of times we think that we need to overdo and we don't. We really don't.
Yeah, especially when it comes to just health in general. If we're trying to make a change, specifically get into a new pattern, it's almost like we just have to throw more darts at the wall sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think our topics can be really enlightening today, where the first aspect of efficient fitness is really understanding a term we use called movement nutrition, where when you look at fitness and just exercise in general, it really comes down to 5 big components that will create a plan that really gets someone what they're after. So whether that's weight loss, whether that's just to improve their health, to feel good in their bodies, there are 5 main things that we need to focus on to kind of develop that routine.
Can we take a step back, Jeff? What do you mean by the term movement nutrition? Do you mean what feeds the way that you move your body?
Yeah, so when you think of like like nutrition. A nice analogy here is there's 5 components of a balanced nutrition plan. And I think many people are aware of this, but you've got the macronutrients and then you've got the micronutrients. The macros, when it comes to nutrition, protein, carbs, and fat. And then the micros are vitamins and minerals. And so with fitness, I don't think it's always clear of what are those 5 specifics around fitness. And we tend to term those hardware and software. And so that's a nice way of looking at this where it's just like you would design a new meal plan, the same thing you can do for a fitness routine.
And that's a nice way to break it down too, because you might have, if you're starting to develop this from scratch, you might have just a blank template with the 5 components listed out, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's some of these components that get neglected. And depending on what your goals are, depending what you're trying to accomplish, it's crucial that you really look at what's the lowest hanging fruit first. That would be the same thing when you think of nutrition is if we're overdoing one category or not getting enough of something, that's how we can, from a fitness perspective, give our body what it needs. And when you think movement nutrition, we need to move in a way that's going to actually lead to more of those vitamins and minerals from that standpoint.
Do you see, when folks come to Skyterra, when guests are on campus, is there usually one component of movement that has been neglected, or is it different for everybody?
I think it's different for everyone. However, there are some common themes. So when you think of probably the top 2 that are neglected, you could look at strength training and then mobility work. So they're both in 2 different buckets. When we look at like changing our fitness routine, oftentimes people focus on cardio as like that main lead thing that they start doing. So it's really important to recognize, okay, which one is really going to lead me to the results. But strength and mobility, definitely kind of the top 2 that get neglected.
Okay, so let's get into each of those. Do you want to talk about mobility?
Yeah, so just to kind of back up, the 5 components are split up where we've got cardiovascular fitness, which can also be referred to as cardiorespiratory. Strength training actually gets split into 2 buckets. So we have muscular strength and then muscular endurance. Both of those are going to give you different things, which we'll talk about today. Mobility is kind of the elusive component where it has to do with soft tissue therapy. So like foam rolling, therapy ball work, or stretching. And those are kind of the 2 main categories. And then the 5th category is also probably could be on that list along with strength training and mobility is breath work. So this is something we emphasize a lot at Skyterra. And those are kind of the 5 we want to look at and explain a little further today.
Perfect.
Yeah. So you want to talk mobility?
Do you want to talk mobility?
Yeah, let's do it. So when you think of mobility work, I think it's an elusive term. Some people look at this as flexibility. The 2 areas and a nice analogy here to kind of break it down simply is almost similar to how you take care of your teeth. So brushing and flossing. Flossing is always the one that's the tougher of the 2 to do. And that's where soft tissue therapy comes in. So many of the classes we host aren't just yoga classes, but within yoga classes, we'll do soft tissue therapy. We have mobility specific classes, which will deal with what's called therapy balls. And so these are like trigger point balls that we can place on our body. We can do different exercises to smooth out what's called fascia. Fascia is connective tissue of the body, and essentially that really will do something different than stretching. It'll allow your body to feel a lot better instantly, and you can actually see change really quickly. Another tool for more of the flossing side of things, the soft tissue side of things, would be foam rolling. A lot of folks hate foam rollers. I get it. However, when you think about it, if you haven't been taking your car in to get regular oil changes, of course, your body's going to feel probably not awesome. And that's why soft tissue therapy can kind of be the thing we avoid the most. And so that's one aspect of mobility. To hit on the stretching really briefly, that's going to involve bands. That could be a yoga strap. Those could be specific corrective exercises that we might just do something like a pigeon pose to specifically target the hips. So those are kind of the 2 main categories when it comes to mobility.
What are the benefits of mobility?
So the biggest thing, especially for you were sharing your story and how like that fear of aging, and I think that's a common fear for everyone. Like when we think about it, It's scary when our body doesn't do what it used to do. And this is where mobility can come in as an amazing tool that we can just slow down, that we can focus on. So mobility will basically, one, improve your range of motion. So it makes it easier for you to bend over and tie your shoes, to get up and down from the ground, and really to just go about your everyday. So the second piece is you can improve your daily living activities just tremendously when you're spending the time on mobility work.
And how much time should people spend on mobility?
So with movement nutrition in general, we want to be super clear with what efficient expectations can be for each of these components. So honestly, just starting with 10 minutes a day is kind of the sweet spot. That might sound a lot like in the beginning. Just start with one technique per day. So whether that's using the therapy ball or one stretch, that's where you definitely want to start out when it comes to mobility stuff.
And we talk a lot about building habits and how long it takes to build a habit, and how it's not necessarily how much time you spend when you're building it. It's more of bringing yourself to the space where you're starting the habit. So if 10 minutes doesn't seem doable, even just one movement or a couple of minutes, just getting yourself in the routine of...
Or like 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Like, I think just like we're talking about, and I can empathize with this, is we always feel like if we're not perfect in the beginning and we don't do a certain amount of time, that why are we even doing it? But the fact of the matter is we've got to get consistent with it first.
So if I'm building my efficient fitness routine and I'm thinking I have an hour, let's say, or half an hour, and we're building that, where does mobility fit into that?
So say we're building this routine, we're trying to make it work with our lives and not against us. The simple place to kind of start is do your mobility work right after one of your strength training sessions or right after a walk. Kind of try to weave it into your life where it's killing two birds with one stone. The other thing that I think a lot of individuals enjoy with mobility work is maybe doing it first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening. That can really help your sleep patterns if you do it in the evening time. And then in the morning, it can kind of get you ready to go for the day. So kind of you're loosened up, and that day tends to go a lot better just with even the 5 to 10 minutes of mobility work.
So you're listening to your body for where that fits best in your day.
Yeah, I think when you think of fitness in general too, everyone's like, oh, you have to do it in the morning. I think you've got to always treat yourself as an individual. And that's where we can, talk about how much time is right for each individual who may be starting their fitness routine. There's no one time domain for all of these components. It really comes down to the person.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right? We're individuals. How cool is that?
And then, Jeff, I think that, I was at Skyterra, and, I see a lot in the fitness world. I'll see a lot of people using voodoo floss, for example.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised and happy to see folks from Skyterra knowing exactly what to do with the voodoo floss. So you mentioned that briefly, but for tools like that, when would be the best time to use it? If someone feels an ache or a pain in a certain spot, how do they know when to use a tool?
Yeah, I think one experience, you start to learn when to do what. I think when you think of voodoo floss specifically, it's one of those techniques that most people don't know about. That type of technique is probably the most profound when it comes to immediate change and pain relief. So,
and let's describe that. So
voodoo floss is essentially you can wrap any joint area, and that extra R is just because I'm from Massachusetts. So
I was going to point it out.
I know, right? So say you rolled your ankle or something. It was just a mild roll. Wrapping around that joint it's basically like an elastic band,
like a giant rubber band.
Giant rubber band, exactly. And it's in a roll. You basically 50% wrap it, almost like you do an ace bandage in a way. And then you only leave this voodoo floss on for 2 to 3 minutes. What it does is it kind of restricts the area so that then blood flow can rush into that joint spot and give it some relief. And so it's a really quick, instantaneous technique that can change mobility quickly. As far as some of the other techniques, like when you should use those, soft tissue is usually a little bit better in the evening time. You don't want to roll out your body before an intense workout or anything like that. However, really the best answer is always doing it when it's going to work within your schedule.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else about mobility?
I think mobility, man, I mean, we could spend a whole episode just on mobility.
And maybe we should.
Maybe we should. And the one thing I would say is try to give it the respect it deserves. When you think about it, we don't really perform regular self-maintenance on our body. And how dare us to think we shouldn't have pain if we're not regularly doing something that's going to help kind of ward that off. From a prevention standpoint, from someone who's just trying to feel better on an everyday basis, mobility is the thing that it's not sexy. However, if you're consistent with it, it will definitely pay dividends.
Right. And even if, especially if you're adding in a new exercise routine, new strength training moves, it's really good to take care of your body. And using mobility on a day where you're not going to exercise, you're not going to, hit the gym, or you're not going to do whatever you've been doing in terms of strength training, can still keep you in the mindset of movement and still can keep you in the efficient fitness mindset.
100%. And one last thing to add, yoga does count as mobility. So I think this is where there's some overlap in the different types of fitness that are out there, which is really inspiring when you're starting to design that new efficient fitness routine.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Want to talk breathing?
Yeah, we should probably talk breathing. I know we talked about how strength training is one of those top ones that gets neglected, but breathing should be right there. When you think of how we're breathing today, most people are mouth breathing and they don't even know it. So when you think of like sleep issues, just lethargy and being more tired, a lot of that stems from how we're breathing. This changes as we get older. This changes as more stressors come on top of us. And so with breathing, there's really three things to know on like how to breathe. One, you should try to be nose as often as possible. Different fitness sessions will change that. The second thing is we want to belly breathe. So this is sometimes referred to as horizontal breathing. A lot of folks breathe with their chest. And what we want to make sure of is that we breathe through our belly so that the air can travel up into the diaphragm. And then the third thing to remember with breathing, and this is just purely the technique of it, is to really breathe light to breathe right. There's a great book out there. It's called The Oxygen Advantage by Dr. Patrick McCowan. And he really just goes into depth on why these three mechanic issues can be problematic.
Mouth breathing, other than being an insult, when you call someone a mouth breather.
Yeah. I actually go out on the weekends and try to call at least one person a mouth breather. So we do have to be careful with that term.
Yeah, we do. Mouth breathing versus nasal breathing. So when you're breathing through your nose, the air gets filtered an extra step and warmed an extra step. Right?
Yeah, 100%. That's a nice add. And you also, you uptake more oxygen into your body when you breathe through your nose. This is not commonly thought of because it's like you look at the size of the cavities, 10 to 20% more air is upticked when you breathe through the nose. So you're actually getting more oxygen to your body.
It's interesting too. I have some of my athletes, when they're training for endurance events, do their warm-ups all completely nasal breathing. So nose in, nose out. And they find that their breathing in races becomes a lot more efficient because they're having to use that even just in a warm-up.
Oh, yeah.
And then, it's a really great regulator too, because if you're breathing out of your mouth, you just slow down.
Yeah. And you get exhausted quicker. So like all those new exercisers out there, you're trying to get into a fitness routine, treat breathing in a way that is similar to how you would treat other movements. Because if you want to make your workouts more fun, you don't want them to be as just of a struggle, specifically in the beginning.
The drudgery of it.
Yeah, by working on your mechanics, it can go a long way and actually make your fitness routine a little bit more enjoyable.
And the nice thing about breathing, like you were saying, you can work it right into your fitness. It doesn't have to be an extra step, although it could be.
It could be. And I like what you said about like weaving it into a warm-up. Just being conscious of it, I think, when we're moving our bodies is important. And then conscious of it in our day. When you think of like a day where you've been on a lot and you've maybe spoken a lot, you've had a lot of meetings or whatever your world looks like, you're so exhausted because you're actually using your mouth a lot. So there is a play with just how you're living to be more efficient and not kind of drain the body in the manner that we might be when we're just using our mouth.
Right. Okay. So back to our building our efficient fitness routine.
Yeah.
30 minutes or an hour. Breathing could work into a warm-up.
Yeah, work it into a warm-up. I think breathing pairs beautifully with mobility work. So on campus, we have a class called Connect. And Connect is 30 minutes of breathing and stretching. Breathing and mobility work as well. So we might throw some soft tissue therapy in there. What's cool is all our pros teach it, so our guests get a nice variety of different Connect routines. However, when you take that routine out of our program and bring it home, that could become like a 15-minute practice. So doing 5 minutes breath work, 10 minutes of mobility work, maybe you start with 3 days a week. Awesome way to plug that in as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I bet our listeners want to hear more about breathing, so that might be another episode entirely.
We should keep a list.
Yeah, I mean, this list is going to get long. This is exciting.
Let's move on to strength training.
Yeah, let's do it. I think strength training is always an interesting topic. Where do you want to start?
I think for folks who have not done any kind of strength training before, I think this is the piece that can be the most intimidating. And it doesn't have to be, because strength training doesn't mean that you're going into a gym with loud music and clanking metal. You can use just your body weight.
Yeah. And I think that's the most important place to start as well. So I'm glad we're kind of have a conversation around that initially. I had a client once where she purchased 10 personal training sessions, okay? She said she was going to work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you could tell she just wasn't super comfortable in her body. She was trying to get back into fitness. She had been a mom, and her kids were finally getting older, where she could get back to focusing on her. And I just remember she purchased the 10-pack right away, was excited in the session, her introduction when we were just feeling out what was going to be right for her. And she wanted to do it first thing in the morning, 6 a.m., 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So she shows up in the parking lot, drives in. It's probably about 5:50. So she's 10 till the session's about to start. So I go back to the studio and get everything kind of set up and planned out for her session. And then it's about 5:55 and I haven't seen her come through the door yet. And so I walk out to see where she is, and she had actually driven out of the parking lot.
No.
Yeah. And I share that story because it relates to what we're talking about, is that strength training is intimidating. And most of the formats, a lot of the classes out there have made it where it's difficult to get started because of that intimidation factor. And of course, we have many of happy stories as well. So we like to share those in our conversations. But that's a good one to highlight, that if you're someone who's been intimidated to get back into a fitness routine, like, you're not alone. And I think the gym setting isn't necessarily the setting for everyone.
Right.
You might start with a friend. You might just start doing some Skyterra at home videos,
Exactly.
some of our free resources at home. And that's a good way of maybe just not defining yourself by you have to be at a gym, specifically if you're just not there yet, or if that doesn't seem right for you.
Yeah, because in the end, you want to build a fitness routine that you're going to enjoy. Mm-hmm. Because if it's drudgery, if you're intimidated by it, you're not going to show up.
Yeah. And that's like the key factor. When you think of an efficient fitness routine, it always starts with, what do you enjoy?
Right.
And that is a question that every person listening has to answer for themselves. That's not something someone can answer for you.
And I think it's important. Let's talk about how purposeful strength training can be in your life, especially as we age.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about functional fitness and the ability to be able to stand up off a toilet when you're 90 years old, mm-hmm. which really relates directly to a squat, being able to mm-hmm. squat down and stand back up again. And so, that strength training I see as an insurance policy as you age.
Yeah. When we look at how our last 20 years are spent these days, it's oftentimes in a functionally dependent state. So Americans specifically, our bodies, because we're not doing strength training, because we're maybe not participating in mobility work, they start to kind of lose their ability level. And so when you think of kind of a nice phrase I like to remind people of is, don't just be concerned with what you might be gaining as you get older, be as concerned with what you might be losing. And when we think about this, the average person, if they're not strength training after the age of 35, they're going to progressively lose anywhere from 3 to 5% muscle mass per decade. And this is why we see bone density issues later in life. This is why we see falls. So falls, I don't think folks know this, but literally every like 15 seconds in America, someone falls and has to go to the emergency room. Every 19 minutes, someone actually passes away from a fall. It's the number one injury-related death after the age of 65. And it's not to, highlight that as a scary thing, but it's to kind of remind you that you are in control of keeping your body strong and you are in control of keeping your body moving. And so that's where, as we age, it's so important because no matter what we do, no matter how consistent we are, there is going to be some gradual decline, but we can build muscle really quickly, which is the silver lining.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
No, and I think that's where the struggle is we've made it more complicated than it has to be. And that's where we come at it from is like movements you should focus on need to be daily living focused. They need to be compound, meaning bicep curls and tricep kickbacks. Those are fine within a strength training routine, but they shouldn't be like the main entree. They should be kind of the appetizer, or the appetizer be more like the dessert is a better answer.
Compound meaning you're using more than one joint for the move.
Yeah, so compound, you referenced a squat. When you squat, you use so many muscle groups. So it's not just about your legs, even your core is getting some attention there. And so we want to focus on movements that give you the highest bang for your buck.
And something else I think relating to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago is balance. So as you're also building strength, you're also making yourself less likely to fall because you have that balance.
Yeah. And so it's like they both help each other, which is so cool. Where like even doing step-ups, for instance, a common strength exercise which utilize one leg at a time, that's a perfect exercise that's not only going to train balance, but it's going to get one leg stronger in the same way you're using it when you walk up and down stairs.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay. So smart movements.
Yeah. So maybe we want to throw some examples out.
Let's do
what
it.
Smart movements look like. Yeah. So we've got a class. It's called Move Well. This is actually the class that every guest is encouraged to start with when they come on campus. And it involves really 4 main movements, just 4 to start with. One is called the squat. The second is the deadlift. Third is the push-up. And fourth is ring row, or what's commonly looked up as a pull-up. Now, with ring rows, that utilizes like a TRX strap. Many folks have seen those in gyms these days. You can even use rings. That's going to work on your upper back. It's going to get your biceps. Push-up, that's going to work on your chest, your shoulders. And then when you think of the deadlift is how we want to train our bodies to pick things up from the ground. So it's going to actually utilize the back of your legs. And it's really maybe the most functional of all of those 4, just because that's going to help with everything you do. Squat, you referenced it earlier. That's a super smart movement because obviously we've got to get up and down from a chair. And so if you don't think you're doing squats right now, everyone, you actually are.
It's
happening every day. Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of technique to those 4 movements. I do like a step up or a lunge as another smart movement. Lunges aren't right for everybody in the beginning just because they can be pretty potent and difficult if you currently have balance issues. But those are like just 4 quick ones, 4 or 5 quick movements they're really smart to start with that hit the entire body.
And I like those too because they relate, like we keep saying, relate to movements that you would do in your everyday life.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of folks who maybe are going to a gym, they've gotten into a routine of just doing machines. And machines are fine. They have their place. However, they are no replacement for body weight movements. So focusing a lot in the beginning with your own body weight can be very therapeutic, and then also really get you to where you need to go, specifically in the first maybe 3 to 4 weeks that you're starting your new strength training routine.
Sure. So I'm just starting out with my new efficient fitness routine. I've been doing some of the body weight movements. I've been doing air squats. I've been doing push-ups, maybe against a wall or maybe against an elevated platform. Now I want to start to add a little bit of resistance. What are some things, but I don't want to go to a gym. I don't want to go into the Globo gym. What are some things that I could use at home or simple equipment I could buy at home?
Yeah, so when you think about it, you really don't need a whole lot, specifically in maybe the first 3 to 6 months that you're getting into your routine. I mean, it's really interesting. Depending on someone's goals, we may not need very much equipment entirely. Just a couple of sets of dumbbells, great. 2 different sizes, one that's a little bit heavier, one that's a little bit lighter. So, for most people, maybe a set of 5-pounders, a set of 10-pounders. Another great tool for home is just grabbing a kettlebell. So usually about a 15 to a 20-pound kettlebell is a good starting point for most folks. We can use that to add load to the squat. We can actually participate in the deadlift by doing a kettlebell deadlift. And then we can also start to add some more aerobic conditioning within strength training by doing like a kettlebell swing.
Sure.
That's what's nice about the kettlebell. It's very versatile. You can even take that to where you do carries with it, functional carries. So another movement that isn't always talked about is just a farmer carry. I think doing something like that starts to load your legs in a really healthy way. So a farmer carry is just taking a couple of dumbbells and walking a specific distance down and back. So that's a nice add that with those pieces of equipment we've described, you can totally get some good routines worked out.
And I just want to add into, you can see movement demos of all of those on skyterra@home.com, and you can see Jeff doing those movements.
Yeah, we're going to have some new pros demoing some movements here real soon. So if you get sick of me, the good news is we've always got more videos coming out. But yeah, we can break those videos down very simply and just start with a few of them. We even have full routines that are 10 minutes, 15 minutes, some upwards of 30 minutes, where you can follow along with me and do the exercises with most of the equipment that I just mentioned.
Perfect. You want to talk cardio?
Yeah, we've got to talk cardio. If we're going to develop an efficient fitness routine, chronic cardio and cardio in general is overplayed in the media.
You know what, Jeff? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I do like that we're doing this last because I think, talking about the importance of everything else, everybody always defaults to cardio. And I think everything else, dialing it in, is just going to be much more beneficial.
I totally agree. When you think about it, the first thing, even you out there listening, when you walk into a gym, the majority of us may be falling into just walking into that gym and going right over to a cardio machine.
Treadmill to watch TV.
Yeah, treadmill, watch TV. It's really like these global gyms are designed for you to do it that way. So it's not really anyone's fault. But like personally for me, this is an area of fitness that I totally overdid. When we were discussing our stories earlier in the beginning, I literally got down to like a weight of like 145 and I'm at like 6 feet tall. So it's kind of a problem where when we do too much cardio, it can actually strip away healthy muscle. And so we've got to really break down what does efficiency look like because different intensities of cardio will dictate different responses in your body.
Want to talk training gears?
Yeah, we should probably go through the gears. So when you think of like, to keep this simple, we always like analogies. We can really keep it to 3 gears for today. The first gear would be more of the aerobic fitness gear. And this is like going out, taking a walk, and being able to still talk to someone next to you and to be able to breathe in and out through your nose.
And have a conversation.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like you could do a podcast while you're walking or something.
We should do that.
We should think about that.
Alan would not like that.
He wouldn't. It'd be a tough setup. Anyways, this is the gear, to be clear with gear 1, this is what we should do the most of. When you think about what's getting in the way of fitness is we're treating it as exercise. It's something you go and do. Where gear 1 can really be implemented into your day. So this could be like taking 2 30-minute walks just as part of your normal schedule. That's where gear 1 can be highly effective. And honestly, when you think of like goals and helping folks achieve fat loss or just feelings of well-being, like improving mood, energy in the day, gear 1 is the section that's going to really help you with that.
And I think too, gear 1 could be just standing instead of sitting.
Yeah, because when you stand at work, you're going to fidget more, you're going to naturally take more breaks, and that's definitely not a bad thing, especially if you're trying to be a high performer.
Right.
It'll actually help you out in more ways than one.
I actually had an athlete who was training for an ultra who, instead of going out and running for hours and hours, got an overnight job at a hotel where he had to stand at the front desk.
Wow.
So he was able to train a lot more efficiently and make some money while he was doing it.
Boom. That is really epic. I like when you can make money while you're helping out your body.
Exactly.
That's
and
so
training
crazy.
for a race.
Yeah, man. So gear 2, we want to talk about gear 2. This is the one that I was referencing myself kind of falling into the black hole of.
And I think a lot of people fall into it.
Yeah, this is the one that most people overplay. And this is where when you look at like a marathon runner body, or you look at someone who's just doing cardio, they tend to not necessarily have a lot of tone. You can't really see a lot of muscle. And it's because they're prioritizing gear 2, which we sometimes term the mushy middle.
The mushy middle.
Yeah, this shouldn't scare you. Please don't scare you. Don't stop listening right now. The mushy middle, why it can be not so helpful is that it can actually increase cravings. So you can, if you're doing a lot of this, hunger and appetite will tend to increase. The second thing is it actually teaches your body to use sugar, which isn't necessarily always the right play. Now, without getting into like the exercise physiology side of things, it just is not necessarily for health the most efficient way of going about your cardio. Now, gear 3. Gear 3 is a gear that we can throw in there, and we'll probably circle back on mushy middle. Gear 3 is like the anaerobic side of things. So aerobic, gear 1, gear 3, anaerobic. Anaerobic can actually be muscle building. So it's very short in nature. And the line I like to help people with in understanding cardio is, remember this: human beings were meant to move really slowly for long periods of time, or they were meant to move really quickly for short periods of time.
From a bear attack.
Yeah, right, potentially. So that's where anaerobic comes in, is by doing intervals, by doing some sprint work. If you look at the body type of a sprinter, we can actually naturally build some muscle and build fitness faster by emphasizing a little bit more gear 3 training.
So gear 3 is short time domain, high intensity.
Yeah, very short. And this is where when you look at Orange Theory, you look at different programs out there, they're actually not doing a lot of anaerobic training because they're doing it for quite a long period of time. So yeah, this just as a quick example of gear 3 could be, you're just starting out, a row machine is great for gear 3. So like a C2 rower, 5 rounds, 1 minute, super fast as you can go, and then rest for 2 minutes. It's actually more important to recover for a longer period of time to get those anaerobic benefits. And so just to be clear on like gear 3, you don't want to start out doing too much of this. This would be doing something like this 1 to 2 days a week, and less than 30 minutes in total duration with warm up and cool down is appropriate.
Yeah, it's potent. And the rest is built in so that you can maintain the high intensity.
That's the purpose. And it's not that, say you were doing this on a treadmill or an elliptical or whatever, you can go nice and slowly and still be moving during those recovery intervals.
Okay. So Jeff, to bring this all together, efficient fitness, what would be an ideal routine for someone who wants to get started tomorrow?
Ideal routine, yeah. Someone who wants to get started tomorrow. We've given you the snapshot of movement nutrition today. Here's the deal. I would say don't do more than 5 hours, okay? Commit to 5 hours or less in your week. Per week. Yeah, definitely not per day. I think hopefully if you've been listening long enough, you know that's not the message. And what's nice about that is that can be a variety of things. So cardio and gear 1 should almost be the majority of those hours in the beginning. So if I'm going to keep this really, really simple, maybe you start by doing 4 hours of walking, and then you do 2 strength training sessions that are 30 minutes in duration. Now, we can weave mobility and stretching and breath work into those specific times. And then with the walking, I want to be clear, it doesn't have to be an hour all at once. You will most likely be more successful that if, say, you're planning out those 4 days a week where you're going to start doing some walking, just choose 2 different times in your day, or maybe you're doing 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes during lunchtime. And that would probably be a nice way to play it. 5 hours, I think, is manageable for most folks starting out, but don't be scared to kind of scale that back to 3 hours.
Yeah, again, because as we keep saying, the important thing is to just show up. It's not about the quantity.
100%. It's always quality when it comes to an efficient fitness routine. And as long as you focus on the quality and you're consistent with that, you're going to see change not only in yourself, but in your body over time.
Excellent.
Yeah. So we want to wrap this thing up, huh?
I think we do.
Yeah, I hopefully you have some call to actions today from just each of the components of an efficient fitness routine. And when you think about this, Hippocrates probably said it best: the right amount of nourishment and exercise, not too little, not too much. Safest way to health.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of you for listening today. This has been the Inspired Intentions podcast, which is a production of Skyterra Wellness. Special thanks to our producer, Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life. Thanks, everybody.